and welcome to Explore the World. So, my colleagues Tom and Brooke and I in the International Education Office, we can't send faculty and staff and students to the world right now. So, we're bringing the world to JCCC, or we have this semester through this series. This is our last week of the series for the semester because, of course, it's the last week of the semester other than finals. And good luck to all you students who are studying for your finals. And good luck to all the faculty who now need to catch up on their grading. Probably nobody on this call, you're probably all caught up. But anyway, I see some people laughing. So good luck to you. But this is our last week of the series. And we will start again next semester. The second week of classes, we're going to start on Wednesday at 2 o'clock with Terry Easley Geraldo, who's a professor of communications, talking to us about like nuts and bolts on how to have a conversation with somebody we really disagree with. So some of us could have used that before the holidays, but it's going to be right after the inauguration. So maybe that will be a helpful time too. Anyway, and then it will go from there and you will probably get information about that. But today we are going to talk about JCCC Travelers to Latin America. We have 3 faculty who are leading that, and they are well traveled. And we just so appreciate their time and appreciate you all coming. Our first speaker is Professor Bill McFarland, who teaches anthropology here. So Bill, take it away. You can share your screen if you want to, and
Okay.
you can finish introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and talk amongst yourselves while I figure out how to share the screen. And I'm gonna hide my thumbnail. Okay, how's that? Is everybody seeing the bird?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
great, excellent, excellent. So I thought what I might do is share a few observations about my time in just a small part of Latin America. And really, that small part of Latin America was Central America, primarily Honduras and Belize. And really, all of my experiences have been through archaeological projects. So I thought I might present a sort of professional autobiography of my work with different research projects. And along the way, share what my experiences were like, my impressions of Latin America at the time, and offer some observations and insights for any students with an interest in international travel. So my first project and really my first trip abroad was to the site of Caracol. And Caracol is a large Maya city in what is today Belize. And it was a contemporary, maybe even a competitor of some of the great lowland centers like Tikal, Palenque, Calakmul, and Copan. And it's an unusual project in that the Caracol Archaeological Project follows a more traditional model than is rarely done today. It's a well-established base camp in the middle of the rainforest, and it's about a 2-hour drive to the nearest town. And this is what the camp looked like in the mid 90s. And it doesn't look that much different today, to be honest. On the left, you can see some of the huts that we lived in the foreground, and then background. Those are actually the camp showers. If you've never showered with a group of howler monkeys serenading you, then you've never really lived. Over on the right, you can see, the camp kitchen and the labs and things like that. And all of this is surrounded by the jungle. And you'd be fooled into thinking that you're completely surrounded by the jungle. No one was ever here before. But the reality is the camp is in the middle of downtown Caracol. And just right here in this plaza is where the camp is actually located. And so this is an archaeological map of the major structures of Caracol. And on the right, you see the largest structure of Caracol, which is Kana, or Sky Palace. And that's what it looked like in the 90s when I was there. This is what it looks like today. And one of the really special things about this particular city is that it had a whole bunch of different neighborhoods, and all of them were connected by roads or causeways. And when you pull back, you can see here on this map how far out the city really goes. And at the end of these roads is a terminus group. And during the 90s, a big focus of the project was to map in all of the spaces between downtown and the suburbs. And so the little grid with dots in it, that's the areas that have been mapped. And each of those grids is half a kilometer square. So you kind of get a size of the scale of how big this city was. Now, the first year I was there, I worked on mapping agricultural terraces. And then the second year, we mapped residential structures or plaza groups. And this was really a lot of fun. And it played into some of my notions of sort of adventure and exploration. And every day we'd find a handful of plaza groups. And at night, we'd add them to the map and watch the limits of the city expand. And I should mention that in addition to the archaeologists from the US, we were working with a local team, most of whom were from just across the border in Guatemala. Nearly all of them were bilingual, speaking both Spanish and English is the official language of Belize. A lot of them also spoke Belizean Creole. A few of them even spoke Quechua, which is a Mayan language. And so my first observation for students interested in study abroad or international travel is twofold. First, don't wait for what you consider to be the perfect opportunity at the perfect time. I decided to go to Belize because it was the best option available to me. I was really more interested in sociocultural anthropology, but this experience really opened my eyes and shifted what my career focus would be. And second, I found it really comforting to be part of an organized project rather than being simply a tourist. I had a premise for being abroad. And so even if you aren't jazzed about archaeology, consider signing on to a different sort of well-established initiative, something like digging wells, medical or dental outreach, something like that. Okay, so moving on. After my first year of grad school, I began working with various projects. And one of these projects was in Copan, Honduras. And much like Caracol, Copan was a major late classic Maya center. Also, in the history of Mesoamerican archaeology, it's significant as one of the places 19th century explorers like Stevens and Catherwood visited. And most archaeologists attribute their travelogue as the catalyst for serious exploration and archaeology in Mexico and Central America. One of the other aspects of Copan that's really special is the extensive tunneling project. So for the Maya, specific places were special, and that is ritually significant, and they would build on top of earlier temples. And so when you look at the exterior of a monumental structure, you're really looking at the outer layer of an onion with earlier and earlier and earlier temples beneath it. So for archaeologists to see earlier buildings, we would normally have to cut through more recent construction. And this brings with it some ethical and logistical issues. But the Copan River eroded part of the site, and this exposed part of the earlier architecture without damaging any of the later constructions. And that's what you're looking at on the right here, is all of this is reconsolidated from the side of the Acropolis, and those little tunnels that go in there go in at different points in the construction history of that building. Now, one of the earlier temples is named Margarita. The archaeologist named it Margarita, and it was considered so special that it was buried completely intact. And an exact replica of this temple now sits in the middle of the Copan Sculpture Museum. And this is a picture of that. So my time at Copan was spent in support of a number of different projects. I helped excavate at some structures in the hinterlands. I analyzed stone tools. I helped with some mapping projects. And as exciting as all that was, living in the town was a really great experience. Now, as you can imagine, the main draw to the town was the archaeological site. Many big name researchers would come through, and this was an opportunity to network. It was also a tourist destination. for both Hondurans and international travelers. So backpackers from the US and Canada, Europe, Japan, Australia were constantly coming through town. And being an archaeologist and staying there for the entire summer had a way of setting you apart from the crowd. This is the closest I've ever been to sitting at the cool kids table. Was working at Copan as an archaeologist. Now, however, over time, the tourist industry did transform the town into something of a theme park. And although it's nice to visit the site today because it's much easier and more comfortable, I think it's lost something of its charm because of this influx of tourism. Now, I kept working on projects in Copan, but in 2000, I began my dissertation research at a site called El Coyote in the village of Pueblo Nuevo, which is just outside of San Pedro Sula in Honduras. Now, the site of El Coyote is relatively large, and it's situated in a narrow valley. And this valley connects two major rivers in Honduras, the Ulúa and Chamelecón. And the site itself is constructed on a really narrow plateau overlooking the Cacualapa River. And in these images, you can see how quickly the valley narrows, but you'll also notice the difference in vegetation between the dry season in the upper image and the rainy season below. And I should mention that the seasonal shift from dry to rainy establishes the timing for most excavations. We tend to dig from January to mid-May when it's dry, and then work in the lab for the remainder of the summer. And the 2 seasons I spent working in Pueblo Nuevo were really the longest time I continuously spent abroad. I would stay January through August and then return home for the start of the fall semester. And perhaps more than any other time, this is when I really felt the most connected to the country. I worked with and got to know lots of people from the town. Somehow I ended up with a Honduran driver's license. I did the weekly grocery run for the project. I spent a lot of time learning how to get around San Pedro Sula, which is this major metropolitan city. I began to meet with officials in the government. And it was around this time that I began to think it was feasible to run a project on my own. And now it took several years for me to complete my dissertation and start a new job here at the college and collaborating with people in the government before the next project began in earnest. Now, the director of the Honduran Institute of Anthropology and History recommended the Jesus de Toro Valley as an ideal place for a project. And my research partner, Miranda Stockett-Surrey, and I visited the valley in 2004 and again in 2006. And we agreed that the valley had a lot of potential. Now, in addition to being one of the most beautiful places in Honduras, the valley had a lot of potential for research. There was rock art, monumental pre-Columbian sites, ruins of colonial period churches built out of adobe brick. So we had the suspicion that the entire cultural sequence for Honduras was in this valley. And we also had the help of some knowledgeable and well-connected informants like Neri Fiallos here on the left, and also support from the mayor's office. And here I'll drop a little bit of really obvious advice, and that's to take the time to learn Spanish. The better your language skills, the much richer your experience abroad will be. In hindsight, just getting by with my basic Spanish really prevented me from working as closely as I'd like with community members. Now, in spite of this, over the next few years, we really hit the ground running. We established a field school, and students from JCCC were able to practice archaeology and have an international experience. And much of the time was spent in the field or the lab, and we also took a lot of field trips. This included day trips to cities like Comayagua and longer trips into the Lenca Highlands to visit some of the colonial churches in smaller towns like La Campa and Gracias a Dios, pictured here. Now, overall, I felt like our efforts in Honduras were a success. We presented our research at conferences in Honduras and also in the US. I was also heartened by the growing interest in our work from people in and around Jesus de Toro, I found myself in the position of giving more interviews than I expected, and certainly more than I was comfortable with due to my survival level Spanish. I would come to find out that our work tied into a broader indigenous movement to use Lenca identity and cultural heritage to improve socioeconomic and political conditions for Highland communities. And this brings me to one of the biggest lessons learned from my time in Honduras, and that is external forces have a way of setting parameters on your activities. From the late 90s to the early 2000s, there was relative stability in the country. This is true both politically and from a security perspective. However, in the summer of 2009, the president of Honduras was removed in a coup d'etat, and the country went into protest, and we actually needed to cut our season short by a few days. We returned in 2011 for a final field season, but by the following year, the situation in Honduras had deteriorated so much that even the Peace Corps left. So there's a certain amount of uncertainty and flexibility with expectations when it comes to working in Central America. And to that point, I'm going to end with an ask for help. And that is, Honduras and much of Central America has been devastated by back-to-back hurricanes. There are a number of grassroots efforts with GoFundMe sites, and these go directly into Honduran communities. And so you're not paying for the infrastructure of a multinational corporation, and then only a fraction of your dollar actually ends up with people who need it. So if you're interested in helping financially, you can reach out to me afterwards and I can send you the information. And I think with that somber note, my time is up.
Thank you so much, Bill. I worked with that archaeology field school. I was the study abroad office end of that. And I can tell you what a great experience it was for our students, and how sad we were when that had to end. And I also want to just repeat what Bill said about how Honduras has been devastated by these two back-to-back hurricanes within about a week of each other. And if you would like advice from Bill on how to give, you can contact him directly, or if you're from outside of campus, you can reply to the email you received and we'll give you his contact. Our next speaker is Luz Alvarez, who teaches foreign language instructor here. She is from Mexico. She has also worked on our study abroad projects several times, and I've worked with her. And so Luz. You are muted,
okay.
Luz.
Now I got unmuted. Okay, well, like she said, I am Luz Maria Alvarez. Can you see my, let me see if I can share my screen with you, because I had to move from my office to...
If you go to the bottom to the green share screen.
Yeah. Can you see it now?
We see that you've started sharing. Oh, here it comes. Yes, we see it.
Yeah, I don't know, for whatever reason, my internet is having some problems. But okay, so like you say, I am Latin American, I am Mexican first, and I consider myself Latin American second. And I feel I am completely bicultural because I have lived in this country for many years, but my ties to Mexico and Latin America are really strong. I just love Latin America. What you can see on the screen is my hometown, and that is the fourth biggest city in Mexico, and it's called Puebla. And usually when we talk about Puebla, we're always proud of our colonial architecture, the legacies that were left by during colonization. And you can see they are just beautiful buildings and beautiful traditions that we have in Puebla. And I was just like what Bill resonated so much with me, because we also have a tradition of architectural sites. Puebla is not only an a colonial architectural gem in Mexico, but it's also a very important archaeological site. So we have a pyramid. So it is, you know, when Bill was talking, it resonated with me just going to the pyramid and look at all the places and the archaeological sites. And what you can see is a symbol of Puebla. It is a huge volcano. It's the second biggest volcano in Mexico, and it's very active and sometimes very scary for the people because from time to time it just sends smoke out and some eruption. And what you see there is a church, which is the symbol of colonization, but that church was built on top of a pyramid. So what it looks like a hill right there with green vegetation is actually a pyramid that needs a lot of digging because it's just a huge infrastructure that dates back to, I don't know, more than 1,000 years. We have everything in Puebla. You can go there as, you know, for architecture, you can go there for food, you can go there for archaeological sites, and Pueblan are very proud people. And I'm saying that from the perspective of a Mexican. We really think that, you know, and my friends, that there has to be some more closeness between the US and Mexico because we are neighbors, right? That is something that will never change. We will always be neighbors. We will always be sharing a huge border of about 2,000 kilometers. And there is a lot of misunderstanding both ways, you know, going one way and the other, because all that we hear from each other is the media, right? So there is a lot of mischaracterization about Mexico and Latin America in general. So to me, it's very important that we continue, you know, events like this, that we communicate, you know, we talk to each other about the things that we have in common. And, you know, this is great because we just have to, you know, I wish that Mexico had a different situation where we could take more students and see, you know, more of the south of the border aspects of Mexico, so you can see and you can understand the cultural differences, but also the similarities. People really want to take care of their families. They want to find a job. They want security, and you know, and they want to be friends with everybody. Mexico is a very hospitable place. The culture is very hospitable. Maybe you have experienced that. In general, Latin America is very hospitable, but I think that Mexico has just a little bit of, you know, we go a little bit up the scale of hospitality. I'm showing you the region of where I'm from is the state of Puebla, and I am from the city of Puebla. And that's located right there, center part of Mexico. But also, like Janet said, I have been going to Guadalajara, and Guadalajara is probably about 400 kilometers, or you know, about 250, 300 miles from Puebla, and a little northwest of Puebla. And Guadalajara is bigger than Puebla. It's the second biggest or third biggest city in Mexico. And that's where I began. And I have been really fortunate to be part of the health brigade first, when in the 2007, 2010, we had a program where we took students from the dental hygiene a program to go and do a lot of just work and practice their skills in this community. Um, the relationship between JCCC and the community of Las Pintas dates back to 1990s, when you know, the person before Tom, Ms. Cadell, went and explored that area and found these two wonderful women who just have dedicated their lives, their resources to create a community center in this part of Guadalajara, which at the beginning there wasn't anything. It was probably about 35 years ago when people from small towns around the state of Jalisco came to just, they came and then they settled there. And they didn't have any kind of services, no electricity, no kind of services, no water, and no roads, nothing. But they knew that they were coming and they were going to stay. And Carmen and Marta are the people who founded the community Centro Integral Comunitario in Las Pintas. And then they were very visionary in the sense that they found that kind of relationship, where to find a relation with not only American colleges, but also international colleges that can take students there and do something for the community. And you can see a quote that I love from students who have been there, that they think they're gonna come and change the world, but actually the impact that these programs have in terms of knowledge, getting to know yourself, getting to know your limits, and to see how much you can do is really amazing. So the dental hygiene program stopped for a little while. We need to have more faculty who can lead the program, but one that has survived all these years is the nursing program. And so I have also been lucky enough to be part of the program. And I'm a foreign language teacher. I can only translate. I can only be like the bridge between, with the languages and the culture, and explain to people, what they are witnessing, and all of the aspects from the community. And I just have these little a few pictures of something that we always do. Is something so traditional. So we live that every year, when some nurses, most of them are people who graduated from our program, and they want to come back, and they want to be there in a different role. They want to be there as a leaders of the incoming students. So we bring a lot of things for the community, um, toys for the kids, plays, things to play, clothes sometimes, and just to be ready. We need to get ready to have stations where people are going to come and they're going to get screenings. So the people in the community, some of them have medical insurance, which is like what the little that the government provides to them, and some of them don't, because all of them are just people, working class people. They might be working for a company nearby. There is an industrial complex near Las Pintas, and some of them might be working in factories, and then they get insurance. But a lot of people work in the informal economy, so there is no way that they can be provided with insurance. And so this is sometimes the only time when a lot of the people from the community have the chance to get a screening, and to have their blood pressure taken, and their glucose levels taken, and they listen to your lungs. So that is a lot of times when what people do. They have volunteer women promoters who volunteer with the centro, and they offer their homes, and they go around, and on every single day they invite people from the community, and then they say, well, we have these students who come from the US, and they're going to screen you. And most of the time the community already knows Johnson County Community College, and when they see really our students, they know they are the gringos, right? The American people. Once that they start walking down the street, it's like, oh, they are here, because they're gonna see somebody blonde and blue-eyed, they immediately know that, oh, the college is here, and they are really protective of the people. They are really wonderful with all the students and the people who participate in there. So students right at the beginning, you can see the anxiety of, oh, I'm gonna meet, most of them don't have Spanish, but just the anxiety of, I'm gonna meet somebody who's not from my culture, it's a different language. But there is something so magical when these two human beings, encounter each other, and then they're helping each other, and they know, why they are there. That is incredibly magical what happens there, and how proud our students also feel to be able to help and to bring what they have. So you can see several. Oh, you can. What's her name? Can you identify her? Tara, right? Is from service learning. Uh-huh. Yeah. So people, they come sometimes reluctantly, especially men. They are afraid of what are they gonna tell me, but eventually they come, and then they take care of some of the issues that they might have. They might get a referral to the clinic where they can visit the nurse practitioners that come with us, and also Dr. Carmen. And this is the area where we stay. The kitchen is open, the weather is wonderful, and so while moms are taking care of their with the nurses, sometimes we have to have things for the kids they bring, and then we need to entertain them, which is also a really nice thing to do. And people there are really generous and really hospitable, like I said. So these two women, one of them is one of the promoters, one of the volunteers, and her daughter, and her husband has a bakery. And for sure, with the next morning, we're there, and they are bringing us bread, sweet bread for breakfast, out of their generosity. That young girl, we have known her since she was probably 8. And she is already now, a young woman who's going to school. And during her free time, she helps Dr. Carmen and and Martha. Um, we get to see a lot of people from the community, and our students just are amazed to see. Sometimes they are amazed to see that these families are happy, and the kids are playing, in spite of how the perspective is like, they are so poor and they're so happy. And it is such an enlightenment to see that you just know what you don't know anything else. We are all human, and we need to do the best we can. People are not always thinking, oh, I'm poor, and I'm needing this or I'm needing that. People just want to be with their families. They want to be happy, they want to be healthy. Another aspect of the trip is, we also have a health fair at a church. And at that time, everybody gets organized, and they have several stations where people can ask questions about glucose, high blood pressure. Those are the two things that really are serious problems for that community. And a result of poverty, poor diets, not having enough money to get some nutritious food. And that's it. On a note, right now, they are looking at this junk food in Mexico as a really health problem. So what they have done, some governments, they won't sell candies to children unless they come with their parents, because child obesity is really serious, and some governments are trying to do something. So, just like alcohol or cigarettes, they won't be selling junk food to little kids unless they are with an adult. Anyway, probably my time is up, Janet. Yeah. Okay. So this is just one of the pictures that we love, because it really shows this community, and the communion that we have with the people of Las Pintas in Guadalajara. And I am so humble and very proud to be part of it, that I will invite everybody here, if you are in nursing, or if you are interested in some other ways to help, we probably can't, when this is over, we probably can do something. There are so many things that we can do in this community. So thank you.
Thank you, Luz. And that quote that Luz mentioned from the student, we hear that from students every year. It is true. I've experienced it, and I think many of us on this call have, that international service can deeply impact our lives. And we've had our Las Pintas project going for over 20 years now, and really are looking forward to resuming it when we can travel again. Our last speaker is Sam Somerville, and he's Luz's colleague in foreign language. He grew up in Latin America. And Sam.
Okay, thank you. My section is going to be less academic than what Bill talked about. Mine's going to be more about cultural experiences. And can you see, am I sharing my screen now? Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
so the topic is a gaucho in Kansas. So you might wonder, what is this all about? So what is a gaucho? So it's kind of similar to an old West American cowboy. That's what a gaucho represents, and it's usually men. They're a mix of Spanish, Indian, and African ancestors, and so basically these gauchos lived in the 1700s, 1800s, would sleep under the stars, and they were pretty nomadic, and they did not like rules or regulations or specific cultural norms. They pretty much had their own cultural norms, and they enjoyed their freedom. And where does a gaucho live? Well, the gauchos live in southern part of South America, and specifically in Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and southern Brazil also. So obviously they were very popular and romanticized in the 1800s and early 1900s. But of course now there's no place for them to roam freely. So now they work, in the countryside in very specific areas. So this is a current picture of what maybe a gaucho might resemble today. And so something they did all share, and very different from the US historical cowboy figure, is that they all drank this strange drink here, which is called mate. So as you can see, they're all sipping this drink that is usually hot. And so the reason of my topic is this a gaucho right here? What do y'all think? No, right? So that's not a gaucho, but I did grow up in Argentina, and well, since I was about 9 years old, I live in Argentina. So I guess that's my claim to being a gaucho. I'm not particularly a good horse person, but I guess somebody took a picture of me on a horse once. But I do share in common something with the gauchos, and it's that I've been drinking mate for many, many years since I was a little kid. So that's me drinking mate. I found this picture recently, kind of funny. So because I grew up in Argentina, I've been leading groups to South America, especially to Argentina. We tried to do one on Peru last June, but we had to cancel that. And in order to attract people to the different trips, the Fulbright trips, to take teachers, or just regular faculty-led trips to take students and community members is I tend to show these images, and these are pictures from the north west of Argentina, where it's arid and where there's a strong influence of Andean cultures and pre-Hispanic Andean cultures. But there's also the other section in the northeastern part, which is subtropical with these beautiful falls that are pretty impressive to visit. And then, of course, you've probably heard of Patagonia or Patagonia. I guess that would be the better way of saying it in English, with mountains and glaciers and just one of the most impressive parts of Patagonia is this huge empty space with few people. So these are the types of images I try to show to kind of entice people to join our trips. And it has worked for several trips. And of course, people are also interested in wildlife, and definitely there's a lot of wildlife in Argentina. So of these trips that I've organized, these pictures that I just showed are mostly to attract people and get their attention. But what I really think, and it's kind of like we've been talking about with Luz and Bill, is the connections you make and the people and the relationships and just observing the culture. So that is what I've liked the most. I think my most successful trips have not been the shorter ones, but the longer ones in which students and teachers actually live maybe with a host family for a period, exchange close encounters with people. And because I think that is probably one of the most interesting parts of Argentina, is just the people and how welcoming they are and how much you can learn from each other just by interacting with them. So that is, before, just in case I forget at the end, if you ever want to organize a trip to Argentina, if you just want to do the touristy part, then there are all sorts of websites that you can get a tour. But if you are interested in doing some sort of more in-depth experience or volunteer work, then please let me know, and I can definitely help you have a more enriching experience if you ever travel. So why a gaucho in Kansas? Why did I come up with this topic? And the reason is, I guess I should say a confused gaucho in Kansas, because when I came to the United States, I encountered some cultural issues, very interesting ones, and I can't talk about them all right now because there's not that much time. But I want to just talk about a few to illustrate some characteristics about the differences between the United States, or the Midwest, let's put it that way, and maybe Argentina. So one of the things that I did, I came to Kansas to go to graduate school. And so the first few days I was walking along downtown Lawrence, Kansas, and I was going to cross the street, and I stopped here, and I was just checking out and making sure that no cars were driving by. And all of a sudden I saw this truck, well, not this one, but something similar, one similar to this one, approaching. And so I said, okay, I kind of just started to wait, because I was expecting the truck to just drive by. And then I thought it was interesting because I read this in the back, leer, and I said, oh, that's a bumper sticker. It's someone that's trying to encourage, a literacy campaign, read, or leer. Leer means to read in Spanish. So I thought that was interesting. So a few minutes had gone by in my thoughts about what I saw in this in this truck. And so finally, this guy rolls down his window and yells at me, "I'm not going to wait for you to cross all day, so you might as well get moving." So of course that was my first, not my first, but one of my first cultural encounters, because to me, you know, pedestrians have, in my background, have no rights. You just have to wait till the cars go first. And so, but this guy, he had a little bit of a, he wasn't very patient with my time that I was just spending there. Another story I just want to talk about, or experience that I had here, was when I came to KU, and I was wandering around the campus, and I was walking around this fraternity. And so I'm just going to show, this is a little reenactment I did the other day of what happened to me when I was walking along the campus. I'll just let you watch this. I need to find a job. I need a newspaper. I need the classified ads. Hey. Look what I found. A rubber band. Great. Just what I needed. Were you able to hear the audio? Okay, so immediately after that, of course, I picked up the newspaper, and somebody from that fraternity came running out. "Hey, that's our newspaper. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I just found a newspaper on the floor. I figured nobody wanted it. I figured somebody had tossed it there." I had no clue, so I had to explain to this guy that, "Oh, I don't really know what this is all about. I didn't grow up here." "Yeah, right," whatever the guy said. So another interesting thing that happened, I was at a lake, and I was actually drinking mate with other people, other friends that were also from Argentina. And so people started asking, what are these guys drinking? What is this thing? This must be something quite interesting. But they were just kind of polite, and they were looking at me from far away. But there was this little kid that he walked up to us, and he just started looking at us because he thought it was interesting or amusing. So of course the parents called him and said, "Come over here now. You don't stare at people." And I'm like, "You don't stare at people? How do you find out what people are doing if you can't look at other people?" So that was another one of the interesting cultural things. So this is what we had. We were drinking at the yerba mate. And so that was my lesson on to stare or not to stare. So what is this drink? So quickly, I just wanted to show you, I'm going to stop sharing so you can see better for a little bit. But so this is what is called mate, and it's a very traditional drink of the gauchos. They had beef and mate. Those were the two things they had. So you have one of these gourds like this. It could be of different materials. So you have this kind of leaves that's so it's kind of green tea, like a green type of tea. It's not green tea, but it's similar to that. So then you end up adding hot water, and you wait a few minutes. Well, the ceremony is a lot longer than this. And you put this little straw thing, this metal straw, and then you drink it. But the unusual thing is that this tends to be a communal type of drink that you pass around to other people. So it's not something that you just drink by yourself. You can, but it's not. And so there are many different types of mates, of different materials, but that is not the important part about it. The important part about it is sharing it and having it. So you can find this at some stores here, but of course it's all Americanized. So it's a mate latte, whatever that means, or it's kind of like a specialty tea drink. And I did have a student that went to Argentina and they wanted to have mate. Where can I have mate? Where can I have mate? Where can I have mate? And so they thought they could buy it at a restaurant, but no, this is not something that you can buy or purchase at a restaurant because it's something that you have to drink uh, with someone, with a friend, or with family members. It's something that you spend time with, that you don't hurry, you don't rush. It's something to enjoy. So it's basically something that you pass around to different people. And some, I just read something the other day that said, unlike television, uh, mm, drinking mate alone allows you to think, and drinking mate with somebody else allows you to have a conversation. So that's kind of what people like to do is chat and spend some time. There was this missionary from the United States that went to Argentina and went to this Bible study. And after the second meeting, he just didn't understand why they were all sharing just one of these things. It was a group of 5 or 6. So the next time he came with, the next week he came with 5 of these, and one for each because he thought people just didn't have the money or to have one themselves. So, but obviously the person missed the point that it's more of a communal thing. So I think my time is almost up. So what I just wanted to say is that the reason I'm talking about this is the realization that the United States is individualistic society, and many Latin American countries are collective societies. So in collective societies, what is important is the people and not your job. What is important is the community and not the individual. And so in a way, this kind of summarizes what, in part, what it is that a collective society is all about. So obviously, the United States is on the high spectrum of individual type of societies. And so a confused gaucho in Kansas, it may not be something bad. So if you ever want to be a confused Kansas cowboy in Argentina, let me know and I can help you have a nice experience with host families and with a close interaction with people.
Thanks so much, Sam. And I've worked with Sam on trips to Argentina also, and we were working on Peru that got canceled or postponed anyway. So we have some just experienced trip leaders today, and we appreciate all your time. We have about 6 minutes for questions. You can type them in the chat if you have any. But Bill, I just wanted to start with you. You've had some interesting time as an American going into Latin America. Can you recall a time, a significant moment, either an archaeological find or a cultural interaction? What's a significant moment from your time in Latin America?
Well, there are many.
Right.
I think the one that just came to mind is when we began our project in Jesus de Toro. We were really interested in community-based research, and so rather than setting the agenda for ourselves, we met with community members, community leaders, the mayor's office, and said, well, what is it that you guys really want to develop? And they wanted to develop sort of a community center museum called a Casa de Cultura. And they had the building, but they didn't have the funds to rehabilitate the building and set up the exhibition. And so we were invited to a conference on sort of ongoing research in Honduras, in Comayagua. And for me, I thought this was a good opportunity to promote this as an idea. We knew members of the government, the Ministry of Culture would be there, from the Honduran Institute of Anthropology and History would be there. They organized it. And so we went and promoted it. And that established some funding and some resources for them to develop the Casa de Cultura. So I felt like, hey, here's this great opportunity. They want this to happen. We have the ability to make it happen. We did. What made it really memorable for me is that was the one and only time I presented a formal scholarly talk in Spanish. And as I mentioned, my Spanish is not good. And so I had it translated. I believe Sam's sister actually helped translate some of that. And I practiced. I was not the worst presenter. That was my big surprise from it. But it is certainly the most memorable experience. Certainly, it was like 2007. You know, if you want to find ways to get your adrenaline going without drinking mate, that's one way to do it.
Thanks, Bill. Beth would like to know, Sam, where she can buy mate in the U.S. and
Oh,
also, what city did you live in Argentina?
So yeah, I forgot to say that it's really high on caffeine. It's extremely high, so it's a lot of fun because of that. You can get mate in many grocery stores, and there's one brand, and I can't remember what it's called, but you can find that. But really, the best way to buy it is through on Amazon. And you can, at least I can get the brands from Argentina that I'm familiar with. Obviously, it's not cheap, but that's where you can get them. And I lived a year in Buenos Aires, and then most of the time I spent in Cordoba, which is the central part of Argentina. I spent most of the time in a smaller city called Villa Maria, and I did go to college and spent some time at the capital of Cordoba.
Thank you. Luz, this might be our final question. I want to ask you the same question I asked Bill. When you have been with our students, because you have led and co-led and helped with so many of our trips to Las Pintas, a memorable moment that would sort of give us insight into the situation there?
Basically, it's not really one particular moment, but it is the moment when you can see how the nursing students, basically the nursing more than because we are not doing the dental, how when they connect to that deep level with the community, even when they don't speak the same language, they can really connect with their heart and with whatever they bring to each other. So there are so many moments when I see one of the promoters or somebody from the community approaching one of our students and hug her and say thank you for coming, and you are always welcome here. That is that's the best part of it.
Luz talked a lot about, and just again now, about community, and Sam talked about community, and obviously Bill got into the community, and he talked about how even the project JCCC was working on was developed with the community. And if we as a society can learn from our Latin American neighbors, I think that would be a good place, or as individuals also. So thank you all for coming. It's 3:00. We really appreciate our presenters. We will not see you anymore this semester. Again, good luck on finals, but we look forward to seeing you in the spring. So thanks. Happy holidays.